One of the big questions for people who hold to spirituality, who hold to maybe some kind of belief in ultimate reality or in a divine being in God, is the question, what is God like? And this is a question that has been wrestled with in different faith traditions for thousands of years. There is a particular kind of invitation within the story of Jesus, as we've understood it over the last 3 sessions in this little series. There's a particular invitation to see God in certain kinds of ways. Jesus comes to us, yes, a man of his time and place. And yet there is this mysterious invitation to say somehow the divine is present to us in Jesus. And if that's the case, then Jesus is demonstrating, embodying what it is that we might come to know, trust, and believe about God. And that is connected very much to the good news of the story of Jesus, right? A big part of that is an invitation to think about what God is like. And Jesus comes in his own context and tradition. He comes with the history of his own people. And that history is one of invitation into a long conversation, into different perspectives and different prophets who had different opinions, and those who upheld certain notions of God and those who wanted to challenge that and disrupt that. And so the question of what is God like is an old question, and Jesus enters into that conversation. And I think embodies some aspects, wants to affirm some aspects, some threads of that conversation and say, I think this is what I'm going to show you what God is like. And so I want to highlight a couple of those for us today. The first is this, the idea that rather than being some far off, detached, aloof kind of God, the God we see in the Jesus story is one who enters into our experience, one who meets us in solidarity, one who suffers alongside us, with us, and for us. In the Greco-Roman world, this was kind of madness. This was foolishness, as Paul would say in some of his letters. Because if there was a God, if there was an ultimate divine reality in the Greco-Roman world, that ultimate divine reality must be pure and perfect and untouchable and unchangeable. And any kind of suffering or empathy or feeling or even being affected by anything else would suggest that God wasn't perfect, because that God could be changed or altered or impacted or affected. And so into that world, into that philosophical and spiritual notion of what ultimate divine reality must be like, comes this vision in the story of Jesus in tune with his own Jewish tradition of a God who enters into our experience, a God who enters into humanness, a God who suffers, who identifies with us, who walks with us, who wants to have some kind of responsive, dynamic, real relationship with humankind and with creation. The writer of Hebrews, which is a letter in the New Testament, we don't actually know who wrote it, but they say something along this kind of line when they talk about how in Jesus we have this one who identifies with us in every way and knows what it is to suffer and to experience temptation and all of that. And so because of this, we are then, this is what the author says, able to approach God with some kind of confidence, with some kind of boldness, because we are not approaching a detached, judgmental, kind of perfect, aloof God. Instead, we are approaching a God who is also a wounded one, just as we are, right? And so what we have here is a God who offers us hope, not through taking power over the situation, but who actually comes and enters into our situation, offers us divine presence, comes and experiences suffering alongside, and says, follow me and walk with me, and there is hope, and there is transformation, and there is liberation, even in the midst of this very real human experience, right? And so that's one thing that we see in the story of Jesus. God is tender. God is, for Jesus, Abba, which is this kind of very loving, tender term for kind of father or papa, the sense of seeing God in that kind of way. And that flows through to the second thing I want to say, which is that in the story of Jesus, we see a God who is revealed as being love. And that kind of love is self-giving. That kind of love is not punishing, but is instead about compassion. Even Jesus, when he's on the cross, right? What does he do when faced with these people who surround him, who have been complicit in his ending up in the situation he finds himself, and he says, Father, forgive them, for they don't know what they're doing, right? This offering of forgiveness. He does the same thing when he walks around and encounters people, like the man who gets lowered down through the roof in one of the gospel stories because he needs healing, and Jesus forgives his sins. But the man hasn't asked for forgiveness. He hasn't prayed the prayer. He hasn't repented. He hasn't done any of the things that religious folk would tell you need to be done first before God could forgive. And so what Jesus is embodying here for us is a God who is not about punishment, but it is about self-giving love, that it's kindness that leads to change and transformation rather than some kind of punishment reward system, right? As we said in the last session, it's not God who kills Jesus on the cross in order to sort of satiate God's own wrath. And instead, God is revealed in Jesus on the cross as the truly loving one. The theologian Tripfuller says that the God revealed in Jesus does not build crosses, but rather bears them with all who are unjustly burdened, right? And so in that sense, then, the story of Jesus offers us a vision of God who is good, who is love, and a love that endures and is stronger than the power of violence and harm and empire and religious judgment. All of that is revealed to us in this story of Jesus. And it's a challenge and a disruption to the powerful and those who would wield power over others. And so we are asked to be like this in the world, to be compassionate and loving ones who enter into the pain of one another, to come alongside each other in solidarity rather than sort of trying to seize power over one another. And then also to allow God to become present to us, or at least allow ourselves to become present to God. Maybe that's the better way to say it. When we are experiencing vulnerability and pain and weakness and anxiety and sadness, as well as in our loves and our joys. This is part of the invitation of the good news. And so as a way of kind of finishing this time, I want to invite you to do a palms up, palms down practice. And you might be familiar with this, you might not. It comes from the work of Richard Foster, or at least that's where I bumped into it. And the palms down are an invitation to release, to let go, and the palms up are an invitation to receive. And so what I might do for you today is describe the practice to you, because I don't want to rush you through it, and then invite you to go through that practice for yourself. And so the invitation here is to take a few moments. As always, I'd encourage you to breathe deeply for a couple of minutes, to just tune into your body, tune into your surroundings, to what you can hear and feel and sense in your body, to bring your attention to your breath, to allow yourself to just slow down. And then with your palms facing downward, the invitation today is to just think through, meditate through, or pray through visions of God or versions of God that you want to let go of. Maybe it's the punishing God, the disappointed God. Maybe it's the God who needs, blood sacrifice before God can forgive. Maybe it's the God who torments people forever in hell. Those versions of God can be let go of. They can be released. And so as your palms face downward, you can think through those and just release them, even for a moment. And then turn your palms facing upward and allow yourself to receive a view of God shaped by the story of Jesus, centered around solidarity, around one who is also wounded as we are, one who is love and who can be trusted, and in whom we can find safety, kindness, and home. So that's the invitation for today, and I hope that practice helps you.